ChrisTFer, great victory
Hello.
today. That was,
Yeah.
to me, very unexpected because, of course, not a lot of people would have expected for you two guys to hit your stride so closely to the reshift of the roster in order to make the visa situation work. So, can you walk us through this game?
Yeah, I mean, I understand why everyone was like negative on us in terms of their expectations, and I think it made sense. To be honest with you, is if they'd played us this time last week, maybe the rumors and stuff would have been more accurate because we certainly had an upswing towards the end of last week. But to be honest with you, that's how it's always worked in this team, and I'm sure every team, where all it takes is a few things to click, a few changes in certain situations and certain metas, and people start to play with each other, and then all of a sudden confidence is up and it snowballs upwards. So we're certainly not the real deal or a complete edition team yet. I still don't think we're necessarily close to the levels that we set for ourselves last year. But we're definitely no longer, or we're definitely not a team which anyone knows they can beat anymore.
All right. Now, can you explain the timeframes to us? Like, how long have you been practicing with this team? When did the situation become clear to you that you had to add some additions? And yeah, how long did you have to make this work?
I don't know the exact dates. I would say something. It's been within the month is when Hopper and Toby joined us, and we were still optimistic this time last month that at least we thought it was possible that some of the players were going to be either in quarantine hotel for the first game of the season or they might be close. I think one of the things that's hit us quite unexpectedly was that France in general seems to have spiked quite badly in Corona, and I think because it's the UK variant, which is the reason that me and Astro knew we weren't going to be there, but it seems like France may be suffering a similar fate there. So that put us back. And then ultimately we just had to make the decision. Like, everyone was so sick of playing on American servers on these extreme pings for everybody. It was just so demoralizing. Our Koreans had to be awake till like 6, 7 a.m. playing on 250 ping. It just wasn't sustainable. So we got together, and one of the issues you end up running into with the 30-day contracts is it's actually difficult to get contenders players for that, because they don't want to have to take 30 days to play for you, but then sabotage the whole season in contenders. So it's actually not a good option for them. So it kind of left in a situation where we had to look for players both outside the league, obviously outside of contenders, and then we kind of hoping that they could speak English too. So I think we got very fortunate to be able to get Hopper and Toby the way we did. I think they've both been excellent coming in. They're about as good options as we could hope for in those circumstances. And they're both obviously very professional, and obviously Hopper's played with the team before, so it didn't take them as long as you might expect for them to slot in and be playing well with us.
Is there an option that after these 30 days are passed that you will have to extend, depending on, I mean, the visa situation is very hard to guess, but is that something that the optionality that you're already looking at?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm not necessarily the person that's going to make these decisions, but if you had to ask me, I'd be surprised if this time in 30 days we'd made enough progress to where we don't want to at least extend them again. There will have to come a time this time next month where we come to a similar meeting and we have to consider similar options. But like you said, how to predict anything in the way the world has been in these last 12 months, especially when it comes to visas, you truly have to take it day by day, and there's no other way to do it.
Do you guys have any idea? Because like, it is likely that there's going to be a trickle of your European players, because they are from all different countries, and it's unlikely that every visa is going to be passed at the same time. So how is the reintegration process going to work as individual players come into the team?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that I can't give you a good answer for. You're right. I think especially with EQO being from Israel, he isn't necessarily going to suffer because of Europe's COVID spiking rates and stuff. And obviously Israel as a country seems to have dealt with it extremely well with vaccinations and stuff. So we're hopeful, if we can, that he'll be there in the relatively short term. And that's it. Like, this isn't necessarily, we're not out of the woods. There will come a time period where once people start to get there, that we then have to kind of like sink down to reintegrate, transition back to a mixed roster, and then build again. But that's all we can do, isn't it? There's really no easy solution to that. And I guess we just got to try and get as many wins in the early season as we can. So if there is inevitably a dip or some sort of difficulty mid-season, that we've banked ourselves a playoff spot.
What's the practice facility situation currently like in Korea? Is everyone in one house, or is everyone playing from their own apartments?
No. So T1, who's obviously like kind of our parent company, they have this massive building out in Seoul, which is like it's something like 14-story. We visited it when we were in playoffs last year. It's a really nice facility. So the players have got their apartments, which they're sharing between them, and then we're actually practicing from the T1 facility. I think we have our own floor somewhere. So the facility is about as good as it could be. So for the at least for the guys who are out there in Korea playing, they've got everything they need.
Right. Now, a little bit specifically to this game, what do you think? What kind of adjustments did you make on Blizzard World? Because the defense part didn't look pretty, and then you pulled it back.
So the defense, I guess we kind of expected that Seoul would want to, like in Asia, there's been teams that play like a Ball Zen type of comp, and then there's teams that play a Winston Anna. We kind of figured with Gesture and Profit, it seemed somewhat inevitable that Seoul would be leaning towards the Winston Tracer. The problem is, like, a lot of the times you can run Mercy and it's okay as long as the enemy team isn't playing something with like 2 dive heroes. But what Seoul ran out with was Sombra and Tracer, which kind of caught us off by guard. Like, not every team's been doing that to us. And the problem with that comp is we mess up the first fight and we give them a free dive. Then the second fight, they've got a nano and we have no way to really counter it, so it's really difficult. Then the third fight, they're coming in with like a grab, and again, we're struggling to deal with it. Then they EMP us, and then they nano us again, and it just kind of ended up being this like horrific snowball where Seoul played everything perfectly, and just that first interaction on first point where maybe we weren't fully set up for it, and we gave them too easy a dive, they snowballed the entire map from it.
Right.
So when we got to overtime and other maps, we kind of like went away from Mercy and started to play comps just to stop them being able to kill us as free, which I guess worked.
What was the atmosphere in the coaching room or voice channel like when you very narrowly lost Dorado in a spectacular fashion? I think one could argue that Mano tossing McCree over the wall and directly into their backline was not beneficial towards you winning that last fight.
Yeah.
So what was it like in the green room?
I mean, it was a bit disappointing because we thought, especially when we get to third with 4 minutes. To be honest with you, we joke about it in scrims. We're so bad at Dorado, it's genuinely funny. We often say that when we're attacking, we never get to see third point. Like, it's a DLC section of the map. We never get to see it. We always get hold. So the idea that we had third point with 4 minutes to go, we never experienced that in scrims before because we always lose Dorado. So even though we lost narrowly, we kind of knew that that's literally the worst map by far for us, and we still should have won it. Then I think, if anything, it gave us more confidence than not.
Interestingly, the broadcast gave MVP for this match to Carpe. Do you think that's justified, or would you have chosen any other player?
It's really difficult for me to say. So the way that we as coaches have to watch it is we spectate it we can only see like our team's POV. So I'm watching it, and I watched the vast majority of the match through Alarm's eyes. Like, he was, I would say, like 70% of the time we were spectating him. I mean, I can say that if Carpe played better than Alarm, then Carpe played unbelievably well, because Alarm was absolutely ridiculous this series. Like, some of the stuff that he did, I mean, the guy's an absolute joke, to be honest with you. Like, it shouldn't be legal, the stuff that he does. But Carpe also played really well, as always. But I'm going to have to rewatch it from third person to be able to tell you who like my MVP would be.
Do you have an anecdote of a thing that Alarm did during any of the maps where you just went, okay, this is otherworldly?
So, I mean, he's like, we're seeing the sleeps and the nades, and every time the Tracer would blink to him, he'd already right-click the dead, and it's like, well, okay, it's really easy to peel dives when Alarm's right-click the Zen from blinks. Right. But there was an incident on Blizzard World second point attack when he's on Baptiste, and just the way he's able to manage healing, pocketing this guy, doing damage to this guy, healing this guy, and is able to somehow understand I've got a drone at this time, and he's like micromanaging, healing 3 different people, all perfectly keeping them alive. And we're just watching it in the group chat, watching it. It's like, it's ridiculous how it's almost like his brain is, he just sees, when I'm watching his POV, I can only see pocket rhyme, pocket rhyme, pocket rhyme. But in his head, he's clearly got like 7 different things that he's calculating at the same time. So I hope the broadcast got it, but probably not.
For sure. And it's a hard thing to catch for sure as well. Now, okay, let's look a little bit ahead. You got the Valiant game coming up. You must feel confident about this one, right?
Well, not too confident. Like I said, I don't necessarily look at us and say, "Oh, we're the real deal. We're back." And what I can tell you from scrims is this: that I know it's a cliche and it's something like everyone says, but genuinely in the APAC region, any game could be won by any team. I think that people have highly devalued Valiant in terms of how good they think they are because they don't like what they've done, and they've almost made them a villain, and people have felt, no, they're terrible, they're not going to win a single map and all that stuff. But I can tell you that Overwatch, like, just on paper, when a team doesn't look good, that's never the half of it. Like, I can, from scrimming, even a lot of the Korean contenders teams, there's a lot of Korean contenders teams which are better than our teams right now, even though they're on paper their talent isn't as good. But that's just how Overwatch is. You know, you get 6 players and all of a sudden you understand the meta, you have a crackdown, or you have some sort of idea how to play, and you can beat teams which on paper are miles better than you. So for sure, we're not going to go on tomorrow with some kind of mindset that tomorrow will be easy. In fact, I know it won't be. It'll be a challenge, as will every game that we play, at least for this first tournament cycle.
Now, during the qualification of that one, you won't be meeting the NYXL or the Dragons. So yes. Can you give us an idea where you think these these teams are? Are they like one of the top teams? Are they overrated? What's your general idea here?
Well, I think if you compare to what people either have in their power rankings or what people expect from Shanghai, I think they're definitely not the absolute dominant force in the APAC region. In fact, my prediction is probably that every single team, there won't be a single 4-0 team from this tournament cycle. I think each team will probably drop at least one map. Based off our scrims, I think I like New York. I think they've been doing pretty well. When I watch them play, I can tell they at least have a pretty developed play style in terms of the way they play, and I think they're definitely their team play and just the way they play. It looks like they're a team as opposed to some teams who it still looks like it's just 6 individuals playing together. Shanghai are good. Like I said, I don't think they're necessarily, at least right now, not as dominant as they would have been for the vast majority of last season. But with a roster and coaches like that, then it's somewhat inevitable that they'll find their way close to the top come the end of the tournament.
Now, your team was in a unique situation because you were able to scrim in both regions for a while, and probably longer than you wanted. Now, of course, a lot can change since then, as we found out today, with your week of practice making a big change. But if you had to guess, NA teams meet APAC teams in the May Melee right now, how would that go?
At least for right now, the way I see both regions is that there's like a gap between the top and the bottom in NA, whereas the top teams are all really good and the bottom teams are probably like quite bad, and there's this huge gap. Whereas APAC, when you transition over here, it's kind of squeezed, right? Where the difference between the top and the bottom isn't that big. But I would probably argue, and I think this was the same last season, to be perfectly honest with you, that the top teams in NA are probably stronger than the teams over here in Asia. It depends. I think, especially when you look at the differences in meta, that's always what's going to be fun. I think that's one of the things that's excellent about this format this year is that we're actually going to regularly see the NA meta versus the Asia meta, and they actually clash, as opposed to last year, where they didn't really clash at all because it was a random Roadhog patch at the end of the season. We never really got to see like when teams actually had different takes on the same meta, like play against each other. So yeah, I guess right now I'd be leaning towards a team like Shock is probably the best still. But hopefully with 3 weeks more practice, I can prove myself wrong.
Now, maybe as a closing question, one thing that is noticeable or feels noticeable is that a lot more hero switches mid-map come in. Mainly a lot of rock, paper, scissoring, especially like on control. How do you evaluate that? Is that coin flip aspect of it also a little bit frustrating?
Yeah, maybe. To be honest, I've always felt that the meta would be in the best place from, like, if you just a holistic balance perspective, like a rock, paper, scissors type meta is the best thing for the game. And I think right now that it seems pretty well balanced. I think teams on maps where Ryan's good are able to play like a Ryan broad comp, and I think especially in NA they're going to favor that where possible. At the same time on the maps, if you want to play like a slower dive in like the Asian teams always fancy they can. So I think overall it's good. I mean, one thing that I always have in the back of my head is that when teams are only scrimming and not playing against each other in tournaments, the meta always looks super well balanced and super oh, you can play this comp, you can play this comp. It's not just the same thing. And then over time, as teams start to win with a certain comp, people just inevitably copy and follow. I remember if you consider playoffs last season, there was a time where teams were able to play the Lucio, Moira, Sombra, Reaper comp, which was interesting. There was teams like Shock who were having success on Ashe, Tracer, Zen. And obviously you had teams like Washington who were playing this Hug comp. And you had this rock, paper, scissors, this like triangle, 3 different comps in 3 different styles. All felt viable. But as the tournament progressed, teams started to learn this comp is objectively better, because that's just always how it has been in Overwatch. We've never actually had a meta which has sustained multiple comps being good. So I hope for the first time I'm wrong, but I suspect by the time we get to the tournament at the end of the season, you start to see a lot less hero swaps, a lot less rock, paper, scissors, and a lot more rock versus rock.
Do you want to chip in a suggestion, like let's say by May Melee, what kind of a composition will be the dominant one?
I don't know. It's interesting. I think my prediction for a while was that it was going to be something like what the NA teams play. I think I shouldn't. I was going to say, oh, you should look out for a certain team in NA who I think are going to prove to people what the meta is. But obviously, it's probably not good to say before they play. It would be quite rude of me. But I think that my prediction, maybe it's because I've got an EU bias. I think these Lucio Moira comps, especially in NA, are going to start to like really take over, and I think we'll see a lot of NA teams stray away from Ana Brig comps. I suspect in Asia we will never, this tournament cycle, never go away from those comps, because I think it's just what these teams are used to. It's what these teams are comfortable with. It's what they prefer. And then ultimately that will be the best case scenario for the tournament. If the teams are able to get to Hawaii and then we actually get to see a clash of styles and see who comes out on top, that'll be the most fun.
Sweet. Thank you for the interview.
My pleasure.